session, we're going to do some very simple but profound lying somatic movements that really help us to reach in towards places that we can tend to sequester, lay down, held patterns of tension that might come from chronic stress, from trauma, or from habitual postural patterns that can often hold us into these secondary breathing habits that take us, our breathing up into the chest and the shoulders and keep us clenched in places like the jaw. Also following in our stress responses that in their protection brace us in towards the middle, so can keep us pretty stuck in the diaphragm and also quite gathered in, almost like strangulated in the fascia around the organs, which really changes our function of the organs and stops our lymphatic flow. So it also interrupts our immune function in that way. So we're going to do these laying down. I've got a small something, not too large, not like as high as a yoga block, but just enough that when we come down into this position of constructive rest, easing skull down to a place where just softening the chin lightly in towards the throat. As soon as we arrive, we're positioning in a place where the neck is allowed to release, and we're offering space into the base of the skull, where the neck inserts into the base of the skull. So we know we need something under the head if when we lay down our chin tends to lift to the ceiling and we feel that compression into the back of the neck, the base of the skull. And then in this position, it's not feet close into the bottom like we might do in a bridge pose. It's about a footstep further away. And you might feel that feet hip width apart, you can just drop down into where your footprint meets the ground and your leg bones are going to stay in that place. Or if it feels like you want to sway outwards with the knees, or there's pinching in the lower back, then you can come to a wider stance with the feet, turn the toes in, and drop the knees in towards each other. So this is a position of not doing, of undoing. And placing our hands onto the belly, immediately we're bringing touch, reassurance to this place where we can invite the mind, the attention to move down from feeling focused up into the head and down in towards the body. So have a little wriggle here. This is a really useful place to come to an alternative or a meditation, but a position that also puts us into neutral in the psoas muscle, this muscle up through the inner thighs, the belly, and up to the diaphragm. We stand up through and get pretty tight, particularly if we then feel it adds into lower back issues. So taking your elbows as far out as you need to feel there's the possibility of dropping in the shoulders. It's not to make that happen, but to create the space to allow, invite release in these places we can hold our stress. Taking some time now to just feel the breath arriving down into the belly. If it feels helpful for you to place the hands closer to the diaphragm, this is an area that feels, the touch is suggesting movement. Anytime we need, we can feel ourselves drawing into that place we intuitively need, not just a defined position. And so in this place, we can just start a few movements where we circle the lower jaw. It's often referred to as buffalo chewing, where the chin is circling just in very tiny, refined circles. Breathing into the face, around the eyes. Not to force into anything we feel of tightness into the jaw, but to bring awareness to where release range of motion might lie. kindness, compassion. And then taking that in the opposite direction. Letting your breath fully flow, particularly the releasing tone of the exhalation. And letting your jaw come to soft. If that does prompt a yawn or a sigh or any movement into the face, just allowing that to happen. The cheeks, the sinuses around the eyes. So then we can exhale our attention back down to the belly under the hands. Feeling as we inhale, it starts to open space at the front body at the belly. And as we exhale, as the lungs empty, the diaphragm goes back towards the chest, the belly drops. And as you start to feel this motion, you might find you need to just change the position of the feet to allow the movement of the lower back as we follow that in. Inhale to open the front body, exaggerating into that opening tone of the inhale. And as you exhale, the back body, the mid back moving to the ground. And you might find the tailbone just slightly lifting off the ground there. The inhale as we start to arch the back. The tailbone can move down towards the ground. Following the movement just behind the breath. The breath leads, body follows, mind observes. You're going to feel for that motion. You might find this counter movement of the neck naturally happening, whereas you inhale and the chest rises, chin can come down to meet that heart space. And as you exhale, chest drops, chin can rock up to the ceiling. So head staying heavy, we're just tracking a line up and down the base of the skull. And do notice if anything under your head now, there's been release of the neck, that as you move it might feel anything under the head that's getting in the way of the movement of the neck, you just take that out. Space between the back teeth as you exhale and the chin rises. And that softness in the eyes followed through as you're casting down towards the heart with the inhale. And we'll just do a few more of those in this session, but this is such a useful movement for freeing up both the way the breath occupies the body, movement of the diaphragm, space around the organs, the whole communication of the gut-brain axis. It taps into our capacity for self-soothing. Communication through our vagus nerve. And letting that come to settle. And your breath inhaling up the spine, exhaling down. And again, you may feel you just need to move your feet to meet the motion. As you start to wag the tail side to side now. So we're not lifting anything off the ground, it's a lateral, a side motion where imagine your tailbone wagging it side to side. So it's a very primal motion, like a fish or a reptilian motion. It gets into the sides of the body, sides of the spine, the diaphragm, the ribs, pelvis, the organs. We're not specifically doing this with a particular breath pattern, although we can. It's good to do some synchronizing with breath and some just moving and breathing, so we're not locked into One or another thing is just right. You can play, explore, be curious. And so letting the head roll in the same direction as the tailbone, as that feels, it naturally happens from below. So rather than the head just moving separately above the shoulders, recognizing the neck is part of the whole spine. So then we might also follow that in with the arms. As we start to sway side to side. Might feel a yawn, a reach, as motion that's referred to as pandiculating. We squeeze something, reach through it, hold that, and then consciously release. It's a very natural reset for the nervous system. See, animals do this all the time. It's good to let ourselves express that when we need. Until eventually we're coming to arms out to the side, comfortably drop to where you can really feel that release, that dropping of the elbows, the wrists, fingers lightly curled in towards the palms. Have a little wriggle, shimmy over the shoulder blades. You make a bit of an sound, feel that vibration into the chest, breastbone there. Settling back home at the midline. Breath pulsing at the spine. Now we're going to start to circle the tailbone as if we're drawing little circles. Imagine the tailbone is like the tip of a pencil. And just feeling how this might track up the spine. Natural spiraling motions are such part of our design, our biology, our movement patterns. We're working within our boundaries, not crashing into our boundaries, but working with kindness. And your body find the pace that it can settle into with a smooth, spacious breath. And also the pace that allows us to process, to integrate what is happening, so we don't just check out of what is happening, but we can stay present. So noticing how you self-regulate as you go. You might find the head joining in, the chin making similar circles to the tailbone. And you can always back out anytime that feels too much or a little chaotic or doesn't allow you to process that information as you go. A few sounds, checking, particularly as we move things in the lower body, if we need to meet that with release into the jaw, the tongue, eyes and the face, and the fingers. And gently bringing that back to the midline. Settling back to home at the midline, inhaling up the center, exhaling all the way down towards the tailbone and the feet. And we're going to start to take that in the opposite direction, so not the one that you picked first. Take a while to find that. You just let the one that seems to most easily happen occur, and then shift in the opposite direction, really tuning in here. So just seeing what it feels to shift that tide. There's parts of that that's feeling it's against the grain, or breathing kind space around any areas of interruption. Kindly start to let the spiraling from the bottom up evolve on this side. It might be quite different. The head may or may not join in. The way we feel it in the diaphragm, the ribs might be completely different. It is not repetition. Whole new experience. Noticing any movement into the jaw, any ah sounds that come along, which may naturally opens jaw, the palate, the throat. Meeting this opening of our central channel with ease, sukha, yoga terminology. And very gently easing that back to center. Let's bring our hands back onto our belly. And very gently come to sealing in that practice, so moments of pause and integration. Bringing the knees into the chest, moving as you go. So some self-massage across the lower back before snuggling the hands into the knee pits, settling the upper arms to the ground. Come to a neutral position across the lower back. Maybe even bringing back something under your head if that need has arisen from deepening in the hips. So any of those movements you can do. Beginning of a practice, a loosening, very useful to loosen anything we're holding into tissues, into mindset, attitude before moving into any other practice, but particularly for introducing strength and how we gather ourselves up from the ground, from gravity. Namaste.